Good morning, Year 3. Happy Monday and welcome to today's English lesson. It's Miss Everingham here and it is Monday the 1st of March. It's lesson 6 of this term's English lessons. Today in our lesson, you will need a pencil or a pen, your home learning book or a piece of paper to write on, and a copy of the Minpins. Press pause while you gather those things and press play when you're ready to get started. Okay, well done. So, your writing task this week is to write a short retell of the Minpins for your classmate. So you can choose whichever classmate you like to write your retell for. So a retell is when you tell the story that you have just heard in your own words. Before we get started though, let's remind ourselves of the story. I know you read it last week in English, but we need to be really familiar with the story to be able to tell it to our classmate. So today we're going to start reading the beginning of the book. So open up to the first page and click on the link below or use the link that was in your morning email and just listen and read along to the story up to 11 minutes and 48 seconds. Press pause while you go and do that and press play when you're ready to keep going. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to have a read of this paragraph and you're going to try and work out if you know what feature I have highlighted in red. From a very young age, my mum had warned me about the dangers of the forest. Whenever I asked if I could explore the forest, she warned me about the blood-suckling Spittler. The problem was that I was desperate for an adventure, even if it was unsafe. One bright morning, I heard the devil whisper in my ear as I peered out the window towards the dark trees. He encouraged me to escape from the house before my mum found out. I took my chance as soon as she was busy in the kitchen. An excited thrill swept over my body as I ran through the woods until I heard a ghastly sound. I knew it was the tooth-pluckling Spittler because orange-red smoke filled the air. I was going to die in this forest unless I could escape from the beast. Could you work out what feature I have highlighted in red? Some of you got it, and you're correct. It was a subordinating conjunction. And today, my turn, we are learning to use subordinating conjunctions in our writing to engage our reader. I'll say that again. Today, I'm learning to use subordinating conjunctions in my writing to engage my reader. Your turn. Fantastic. Before we learn about subordinating conjunctions, there's one bit of knowledge we need to know first. A dependent clause is a group of words that do not make sense by themselves because they are not a complete thought. My turn. A dependent clause is a group of words that do not make sense by themselves because they are not a complete thought. Your turn. Fantastic. So let's remind ourselves about dependent clauses. The devil whispered in Billy's ear as he peered out the window. In green is the main clause. It makes sense by itself and is a complete thought. The devil whispered in Billy's ear. As he peered out the window is the dependent clause. That doesn't make sense by itself. It's not a complete thought by itself. Be careful to look out for the spittler. That's the main clause. It makes sense by itself. When you reach the forest, that's the dependent clause. It doesn't make sense by itself because it's not a complete thought. Be careful to look out for the spittler when you reach the forest. That makes sense because the dependent clause is with a main clause and it's not by itself. When you reach the forest, be careful to look out for the spittler. The dependent clause is when you reach the forest. It doesn't make sense by itself because it is not a complete thought. Very good. Be careful to look out for the spittler. That makes sense by itself because it is the main clause. What do you notice about where the dependent clause is in the sentence? Yes, the dependent clause is at the beginning of the sentence here. Dependent clauses can be at the beginning of the sentence or the end of the sentence. Which option is a dependent clause? Tick or cross? Number 1, from a very young age. Number 2, my mum had warned me about the dangers of the forest. Number 3, even if it was unsafe. Tick the dependent clause, cross if it's not, and remember, a dependent clause is a group of words that do not make sense by themselves because they are not a complete thought. Press pause while you write down your 1, 2, and 3 and tick and cross on the page in front of you, and then press play when you're ready to check your answer. Well done for completing that question. Let's see how you went. From a very young age, even if it was unsafe, they're both dependent clauses. They don't make sense by themselves because they're not a complete thought. My mum had warned me about the dangers of the forest. That is a main clause. That makes sense by itself. So number 2 is not a dependent clause. Have a go at this one. Which option is a dependent clause? 1, before my mum found out. 2, as soon as my mum was busy. 3, I took my chance. Write down on the piece of paper in front of you 1, 2, and 3, and then tick if it's a dependent clause, cross if it's not. Press pause while you do that and then press play when you're ready to check. Well done. How did you go? Before my mum found out, that's a dependent clause. It doesn't make sense by itself. As soon as my mum was busy, that's a dependent clause. It doesn't make sense by itself. It's not a complete thought. I took my chance. That does make sense by itself. So it's a main clause, not a dependent clause. So number 3 is a cross. Press pause if you need to fix up your answer or give yourself a big tick if you got those correct. Well done. Write down the dependent clause in this sentence. I knew it was the spittler because orange-red smoke filled the air. Can you find the dependent clause that doesn't make sense by itself? Press pause while you write down the dependent clause in this sentence and press play when you're ready to check. Fantastic. Let's see how you went. The dependent clause is because orange-red smoke filled the air. Oh, and I'm sorry, there should not be a full stop there. Because orange-red smoke filled the air, that doesn't make sense by itself. It's not a complete thought or sentence. So that is the dependent clause. Give yourself a tick if you got that correct. I knew it was the spittler is the main clause. It makes sense all by itself. So you shouldn't have written down that part. Give yourself a tick if you got that correct, or press pause while you fix up your answer. Well done. Write down the dependent clause in this sentence. I climbed into the branches until the beast was out of sight. That should probably say, I climbed up into the branches until the beast was out of sight. Sorry, I made that mistake. Write down the dependent clause in this sentence that does not make sense by itself. There, I've just fixed it up for you. So I climbed up into the branches until the beast was out of sight. Where is the dependent clause that doesn't make sense by itself in this sentence? Press pause while you write that down, the dependent clause, and then press play when you're ready to check. Fantastic. Until the beast was out of sight is the dependent clause that doesn't make sense by itself. I climbed into the branches. That is one complete idea by itself. It makes sense by itself, so that's the main clause. You shouldn't have written down the green bit, just the yellow bit. That's the dependent clause. Press pause if you need to fix up your answer or give yourself a tick. Right, now we know that dependent clauses are a group of words that don't make sense by themselves. Now we need to learn what a subordinating conjunction is. My turn. A subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. My turn again. A subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. Your turn. Fantastic. A subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. The sentence is, he sped into the forest as soon as his mum was busy. So, we know that he sped into the forest. That's the main clause. That makes sense by itself. So, we can forget about that part to start off with. As soon as his mum was busy, all of that is the dependent clause because it doesn't make sense by itself, does it? As soon as his mum was busy. There needs to be more information added to that. So that is all our dependent clause. And the subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. So as soon as is the subordinating conjunction. A subordinating conjunction can be at the beginning or the middle of the sentence. So the eager boy sped into the forest when the bell rang. When the bell rang, all of that is the dependent clause that doesn't make sense by itself. The subordinating conjunction. Tell me, where does the subordinating conjunction come? It's very good. Yes, some of you got that. It's at the beginning of the dependent clause. The subordinating conjunction is at the beginning of the dependent clause. So this is the dependent clause. When is the subordinating conjunction? Here, in this sentence, the subordinating conjunction is in the middle of the sentence because the dependent clause is at the, all of that is at the end. But we could swap this dependent clause and put it at the beginning of the sentence. This sentence has the dependent clause at the beginning of the sentence. When the bell rang, the eager boy sped into the forest. The dependent clause is at the beginning of the sentence, when the bell rang. But we're looking for the subordinating conjunction. The subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. So if all this in blue is the dependent clause, this is the subordinating conjunction. So the subordinating conjunction can be at the beginning of the sentence or the middle of the sentence. Here is a list of lots of different subordinating conjunctions. If you want, if you like, you can pause the video and write down some of these subordinating conjunctions that you think you might like to try and include in your writing later in this lesson. Okay, You'll get a chance to copy some of these down later, so don't worry if you didn't get all of them. Okay, which of these sentences includes a subordinating conjunction? And as a challenge, how do you know? Number 1, the frightened boy shivered every time he heard the roar. The boy ran with the speed of an arrow until the spitler could only be heard in the distance. He ran into the darkening forest. Now, a subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. So you're going to find the dependent clause first in the sentence and then find the subordinating conjunction at the beginning of the dependent clause. So press pause while you write down 1, 2, 3, have a read and give a tick to 1, 2, or 3 if they have a subordinating conjunction in the sentence. Press pause while you do that and then press play when you're ready to check your answer. Fantastic. Did you spot them? The frightened boy shivered every time he heard a roar. Number 1 should be a tick because every time is the subordinating conjunction. The boy ran with the speed of an arrow until the spitler could only be heard in the distance. Until is the subordinating conjunction that comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. He ran into the darkening forest. That is only a main clause there. There's no dependent clause in this sentence, so there's no subordinating conjunction. Okay, have a go at this one. Have I identified the subordinating conjunction correctly? Have I underlined the subordinating conjunction that comes at the beginning of a dependent clause? Write down on the piece of paper in front of you 1, 2, and 3. Give it a tick if I have identified the subordinating conjunction correctly. Pause the video while you do that and press play when you're ready to check your answer. Fantastic. Have you spotted the subordinating conjunction? Let's see. Number 1, I hope you gave it a cross because as is the subordinating conjunction, not the devil. Devil is a noun. I heard the devil whisper in my ear. That is the main clause. As I peered out the window. As I peered out the window is the dependent clause. The subordinating conjunction comes where? Fantastic. The subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. So as is the dependent clause. As is the coordinating conjunction. He warned me about the spitler whenever I asked to explore the forest. She warned me about the spitler whenever I asked to explore the forest. Whenever is the subordinating conjunction that comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. Whenever I asked to explore the forest. That should be a tick. He grabbed hold of the lowest branch. This is just a main clause. There's no dependent clause in this sentence, so there can't be a subordinating conjunction, so that should be a cross. Press pause if you need to go through your answer again, or give yourself a tick and let's continue if you got those correct. Fantastic work. Well done on focusing so hard this lesson so far. Write down the subordinating conjunction in this sentence. The eager boy set off into the forest when the sun rose. Remember, a subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. Press pause while you write down the subordinating conjunction and then press play when you're ready to check your answer. Fantastic. Let's see if you identified it correctly. When is the subordinating conjunction? The eager boy set off into the forest. That's your main clause. When the sun rose is that dependent clause that doesn't make sense by itself in the sentence. When comes at the beginning of the dependent clause. And the word at the beginning of the dependent clause is the subordinating conjunction. Give yourself a tick or press pause while you check over your answer. Write down the subordinating conjunction in this sentence. As soon as Billy's mum was busy, he ran towards the forest. I'm trying to trick you with this one, so read it carefully. Find the dependent clause that doesn't make sense by itself, and then find the subordinating conjunction. Write it down, press pause while you do that, and then press play when you're ready to check your answer. Did I manage to trick you? Let's see. As soon as is the subordinating conjunction. Remember that the dependent clause can be at the beginning or the end of the sentence, and as soon as can be at the beginning or the middle of the sentence, the subordinating conjunction. Billy's mum was busy. As soon as Billy's mum was busy, he ran towards the forest. You could change that sentence around and say, he ran towards the forest as soon as Billy's mum was busy. But wherever we put that, as soon as Billy's mum was busy, it won't make sense by itself. It needs more in the sentence. So as soon as is the subordinate, as soon as is the dependent clause, as soon as Billy's mum was busy, doesn't make sense by itself. So all of that is the dependent clause. And the subordinating conjunction, which is what you're trying to find, is at the beginning of the dependent clause. Give yourself a tick or press pause to go over your answer. Okay, so let's remember today, my turn, I'm learning to use subordinating conjunctions in my writing to engage my reader. Your turn. Fantastic. So then, which sentence is more engaging for the reader? 1, he wished he had listened to Mum. Or 2, when he saw the orange-red smoke, he wished he had listened to Mum. Write down your answer in front of you, press pause while you do that, and press play when you're ready to check your answer. Fantastic. Did you say number 2 was more engaging because it includes a subordinating conjunction? He wished he'd listened to Mum. That makes sense by itself, but when he saw the orange-red smoke, that gives us more information. It's more interesting or engaging. We've got the subordinating conjunction there. Give yourself a tick if you got number 2 correct, or press pause while you check over your answer. Can you help me improve my writing? Billy ran through the dark forest. Billy was exhausted. Have I included a subordinating conjunction in my work? Can you help me edit and refine my work by including a subordinating conjunction? I've written just a few here as an idea to help you, but you can choose another one that you might have written down on the slide previously. Press pause while you help me improve my sentences, and then press play when you're ready to check your answer. Fantastic. Let's see if you had something similar to me. Before his mum could catch him, Billy ran into the dark forest. You could have also had the subordinating conjunction after this main clause. Billy ran through the dark forest before his mum could catch him. You could put that at the dependent clause and the subordinating conjunction after this sentence. Billy was exhausted when he fell onto a tree branch to rest. You could have also had when he fell onto a tree branch to rest, Billy was exhausted. You could switch it around. You might have used those words, but maybe you used another subordinating conjunction. Give yourself 2 ticks if you added a subordinating conjunction into your sentence. Press pause if you need to check over your answer. Well done, Year 3. Oh, and what am I missing in the first sentence? Can you spot it? Some of you did. There should be a full stop at the end of this sentence. Well done if you spotted that. Okay, now it's your turn. Remember, your writing task today is to retell the beginning of the Minpins. So if you need to, you can read up to page 16 again to remind yourself of what happens. Now, if you're retelling the story, you're not going to rewrite or copy down every word on page 1 to 16 of this book. You need to use your own words and summarize. So just take out the key points of the story up to page 16. But you have a lot to do today. That's not all you're doing. You need to remember to include subordinating conjunctions. Subordinating conjunctions come at the beginning of the main clause. Sorry, at the beginning of the dependent clause. Press pause while you complete that, and then press play when you're ready to continue, or you can go back and listen to today's recording where we talk about subordinating conjunctions if you need to remind yourself of what to include in your work today. Well done, Year 3, on your hard work and focusing today in our English lesson. I can't wait, or Miss Salib can't wait, to see what you have come up with in your writing today. So keep focusing, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day of learning. Bye.